Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Is the SEC still the best conference in college football? Also, the top of the NFC Playoff picture is up for grabs this Sunday night, and Georgia got ran out of the building by Notre Dame. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. If that first bet wins, visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
A lot of talk about the seeding, the teams in the college football playoff, the teams maybe in the SEC that didn't make the college football playoff. Now one SEC team remains. That's Texas. Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC joins me now. And Chris, we are in the wake of Georgia's loss now to Notre Dame, albeit with a backup quarterback. We have to say that. That's important context here. But there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and rending of garments about the seeding, about Alabama, about some of these teams, Alabama's bowl performance. It has colored a lot of this. Where do we stand right now with the SEC and all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I still think the SEC is still one of the better, dominant conferences, not just in football, but all of sports. I mean, we talk about it, college baseball. They've won how many in a row? Women's basketball. You had LSU in South Carolina. In really men's basketball is the only sport that the SEC has been out on championships. But really, track and field. I mean, they dominate in so many sports. But college football, it's odd. I mean, last year was the first year in forever we didn't have an SEC team playing for a national championship. And now this year, a real danger if Texas doesn't get there, could be 2 straight years with the SEC not winning. And, let's say Ohio State wins it all this year. That would be back-to-back Big Ten teams winning a national title. So, I think we get wrapped up a little too much into the conference pride. I mean, look, SEC fans love to beat their chest on, the football championships. I think, 13 of the last 18, something like that. And
good, yeah.
That run. And certainly from 19, 20, 21, it was cool because it was LSU, then it was Bama, it was Georgia. So it was like 3 different teams winning back to back to back. But at the end of the day, look, it's about what team gets hot at the right time. And making this expanded playoff, if this were any other year, Notre Dame probably wouldn't play for a title. Penn State probably wouldn't play for a title, but It's opened the door up for some other teams to just get hot at the right time. And unfortunately, the SEC came up short. And Georgia, as talented as they were, Gunnar Stockton was fine for them. They just couldn't overcome some turnovers, and Notre Dame ran the ball down their throat. And so, again, look, that just tells me Notre Dame's a good team. It doesn't necessarily mean this conference is overrated or that conference deserved this. At the end of the day, Ohio State's just a really good team. It has nothing to do with being in the Big Ten.
Well, and that's sort of why I wanted to have this conversation, because all of the this team should have been in and the strength of this conference versus this conference, it's like we're going to see it play out on the field. That's literally the point of having a college football playoff. So this is not just an SEC criticism that I'm going to ask you about here, but does sort of everyone that is a college football fan need to kind of reset the way that they're thinking about all of this? Because it seems like in the NFL, we're not worried about, this team in this conference, they're in and they're the 2 seed versus the 1 seed. No, you have to prove it on the field. And that's just not quite been what's happened in college football in the postseason. It's happened in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to 2003 when Nick Saban was at LSU. They win the SEC championship game, and they get in to the national championship game to play Oklahoma, who, by the way, lost, I believe, in the Big 12 title game that year. And that was all they needed was these computers, the BCS computers, to say they deserve to get in. And that was it. And you went to the championship, and they won it. Now the road is so much more difficult. And, yeah, you have to earn it. And, did some teams get an easier cakewalk than others? Yeah, I'm sure Georgia would have loved to have played Boise State or SMU instead of Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. But, it's how the seeding worked. I think they're going to relook at that and kind of say, maybe we don't reward the conference champions automatically, because, look, not all conference champs are created equal. There are some tougher conferences than others. I think, it's simple. If you're going to rank teams 1 through 25, the playoff committee, then 1 through 12 should be the 12 best teams.
Yeah.
Why are we moving teams to the front of the line? And, I compared it, it'd be the same thing if I don't know, whoever, Oregon won the Big Ten championship in basketball, and then you automatically make them a 1 seed. Like, no, we don't do that in college basketball. Why would we do that in college football? So I think there's some changes to come, but yeah, again, I think this is a year that, Georgia was very, they have great depth on their roster in terms of how they've recruited and all this, but they couldn't overcome the loss of Carson Beck. And does that game play out a little bit differently? Well, yeah, I think getting out of the goal line, 4th and goal, I think I trust Carson Beck's decision-making down there that I do Gunnar Stockton. So, look, no point in crying over spilled milk, but you just got to sustain and you got to overcome injuries. You got to, like we said, get hot at the right time. And right now, look, Texas has as good a chance of anybody to still win this thing. The question is, will the rest of the SEC care if Texas wins it? They're going to go, sorry, newbie, we're not claiming you if you win this whole thing. So that will be interesting.
You can stay up to date on the Southeastern Conference by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On SEC on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. We're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up on a Football Friday, the NFC's best team will be decided on Sunday, or at least the number 1 seed. Before we get to that, no team has more Pro Bowlers than the Ravens. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's number 1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The final game of the NFL regular season will determine the top seed in the NFC. FanDuel has the Lions 2.5-point favorites over the Vikings. The total, get this, 56.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The AFC and NFC Pro Bowl rosters announced Thursday, and the Baltimore Ravens have 9 players on the team, the most of any in the NFL. The Lions next with 7. The Vikings and Eagles each have 6 on the NFC roster. Probably the most notable player not on either roster, well, I guess they can only be on one, is Patrick Mahomes. It's the first time since becoming Kansas City's starting quarterback that Mahomes will not be in the Pro Bowl. Detroit's Jared Goff is the NFC's starter, and Minnesota's Sam Darnold also made the team. The AFC starting quarterback, Josh Allen, Baltimore's Lamar Jackson, and Cincinnati's Joe Burrow are the backups. Hard to argue Patrick Mahomes has been better than those guys, at least in the AFC. The Celtics took care of business on the road against the T-Wolves.
Celtics beats the Minnesota Timberwolves 118-115. Anthony Edwards and his comments, wow. I'm saving that the best for last, because I want to talk about the Celtics and basketball and all of that stuff. And then Anthony Edwards versus Jason Tatum, and those comments are coming up later. We'll get to what Tatum did to Rudy Gobert and Derek White and all of the individual stuff. The second quarter, like I said. Let's start with this. I may be giving into some recency bias, but I think this is the best win of the season for the Celtics. I think this is, considering no Porzingis, no Jaylen Brown, Minnesota fully healthy, what they did to Anthony Edwards defensively, how they destroyed Rudy Gobert with Jason Tatum. The game plan was incredible. They executed it well. They protected the ball really well. The turnovers, the big story here, I think, in this game is the turnovers, which the Celtics had 4 turnovers for 4 points, and the Timberwolves had 16 turnovers for 22 points.
The Lions and Vikings meet for a chance to earn a bye in the playoffs. The loser has to go on the road as a wild card. No pressure, right?
Biggest regular season game, some Luke are saying, in the history of the league. Do you buy it?
In the history of this matchup.
Do you buy that?
That's a bit much, but I'm sure there have been other ones. But I was thinking back. I mean, I feel like I've said this every time we've talked this year, Matt. But the fact that this matchup is so colossal, just like 3 years ago, this would have been on the 9th slot on Fox at 1 p.m. Eastern. Like,
would have been we would have.
Yeah, they would have been pulling up college announcers. I mean, this is nothing. This used to be nothing, this sleepy thing. But now it's this marquee matchup, and it's Vikings-Lions. It wasn't supposed to be this, and I love that. These two dome teams in the NFC North. But yeah, like this is by far the most, and maybe even the only time that there's been like a possibly season-defining Vikings-Lions game. Like if whichever of these teams loses, if they go one and done in the playoffs because they got to go on the road and play like Baker Mayfield and that's tough, this will be the game that is seen as the one that defines the season. As, man, they were looking right at it, but they just couldn't get past their rivals. And I can't remember a time when either team's season came down to a Vikings-Lions game. It's always, but there's been plenty of times where it came down to a Lions-Packers game or a Vikings-Bears game or Vikings-Packers, but I can't think of a time when this was more than just another one in the regular season. I think that's beautiful.
The game, what game was it? Well, it wasn't at the end of the year, but the Golden Tate somersault into the end zone game had some meaning years ago. That was week 4, 2017, I think. Yeah. Well, the Vikings were 13-3, and that was one of the 3. Yes, but nothing like this. I agree with you. No. And the Lions and Vikings have played some, like you're right, some stinker week 18s and week 17s have not mattered, and it's awesome. It is so much fun. How do the Vikings get this done, Luke? How do you see it that they go in there and win? What do they have to do? Yeah, I think it's your P's and Q's on offense, right? Like everybody sees what has happened to this Lions defense. There's a lot of tape on it, and I think you'd be crazy if you didn't think the Vikings were going to be able to move the ball here. But you look at the other side. And this Lions offense has had the keys to Flores. They have owned this defense in the past few games. But it's every time you get back in the ring, it's harder and harder and harder to repeat it because the Vikings are going to have a different answer this time. They know that what they brought to the last few doesn't work. They're not going to just bring the same. So if the Vikings can get Jared Goff uncomfortable, which they have not been able to do. Goff's been getting the ball out totally untouched in all of these games. And interestingly, they didn't really blitz in that last game. And this is a stat I know you're not going to get anywhere else. That cover 0 look that the Vikings have with everybody strung out on the line of scrimmage. Yeah. The Lions were the one team that they barely ran it against. They ran it twice in that game. That's as little as any other game this whole year. They didn't use it. And maybe that's because they thought the Lions could beat it. Maybe they just thought they had a different idea. But maybe they bring that a little bit more this time. Maybe they still don't. And that is a sign of respect, by the way. The teams that they have brought it the most against are like the Titans and teams with rookie quarterbacks, like the Bears. But against the Lions, they didn't feel like that was the way to go. So did they go away from what they wanted last time? And that's why the Lions were able to score, on 4 straight long, sustained touchdown drives. Maybe. And then they got to kind of figure that out. But if the Vikings can get those disruptions, force those turnovers the Lions have been so good at avoiding, and prevent themselves from that like turnover avalanche that seems to happen in all of these Lions games where, they get up by a score or two and then suddenly there's a turnover and then it's a 3-score game and then you're just chasing it the whole time. You got to avoid that little sequence, that avalanche. And the Vikings have given that avalanche to other teams. So if one of those happens to one of these teams, that could be the key. Just who gets that nice streak, that one, that crazy quarter where you're going out of it going, and all of your beat reporters are tweeting about how much of a disaster that quarter was. Or will this be a little bit more back and forth and stay on the knife's edge for the whole time?
You can stay up to date all year on the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions by subscribing to Locked On Sports today. Locked On Vikings and Locked On Lions on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Sugar Bowl was a beatdown, and now Georgia is left to pick up the pieces. Could Rocket Money find you a subscription you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Because I have certainly realized that I had something I was paying for that I didn't mean to be paying for anymore. Rocket Money can help you track all of those down. Rocket Money, the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even your goals for this year. For me, one of the best features is that subscription tracker. You got to use it to cancel services. I just got an alert earlier today on something that I was like, oh, I don't use that app anymore. Am I paying for that? Oh, shoot, I am. So I can save money by canceling that. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish dominated the Georgia Bulldogs to win the Sugar Bowl and advance in the college football playoff.
Notre Dame wins and they advance, and it was a fun one today. A really, kind of strange game, and a majority of the offense here really comes within 25 game time seconds. For the Irish, they get the field goal, the fumble of Gunnar Stockton, the touchdown immediately, and then the kickoff return touchdown to start the second half. Man, it was a fun one for the Irish, and it's super sweet to see them advance, because as a Notre Dame fan, like as we're just watching, the past performances in the playoffs, this was so refreshing to see them on the right side of a game like this.
When I think of, I live in the South now, and when I think of SEC football, they usually win the majority of the big games in the trenches. Today, while Notre Dame's offensive line didn't dominate by any means, they had well over 100 yards rushing. And their defense, I'm just looking at the stats now, they had 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. On the other side, they had 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss for Georgia. When was the last time you said Notre Dame had better trenches than the Georgia Bulldogs?
Probably when Georgia wasn't very good, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was pre-Kirby.
Yes, yeah.
It's Notre Dame's had some really good fronts, offense like the 2017 team, etc. But I mean, realistically, like when they played Georgia in 17 and 19, they didn't run the ball for crap. They didn't try to as much. That's probably more on Kelly than anything, but they stuck with what they did. And of course, Riley Leonard is as clutch as it gets as a 3rd down or 4th down running player. But man, when they needed a play, they found it. The penalty that they got on Georgia at the end, that was a wild deal. I don't know. I think Jadarian was moving too. I don't think that the ref caught that, but sometimes you catch some breaks. Everything they needed to do, they found a way to do it. And getting the turnover early, like they were just clutch. And there's nothing more important than hitting the shot or getting the first down, whatever sport it is, making that play in the critical moment. Notre Dame did it about 10 times today.
After such a rough performance, the Bulldogs are just happy it's all over.
This season was miserable.
Thank God,
guys,
it's over.
Miserable. Let me walk through as quickly as I can the different aspects and items that we had to wrestle and suffer through. We had to suffer through Carson Beck not figuring out if he likes football or not for some time. For the entirety of his existence as the starting quarterback for Georgia. The second thing we had to suffer.
Then Carson Beck started getting better and figuring it out and playing really well, Clint. And then on a BS decision right before halftime, hold on to that.
Oh, no.
Georgia fans, hold on to that.
Come back second segment of what actually lost us the game.
On a BS decision right before halftime, correct. Clint, Carson Beck injured his elbow and is out for the season. So we went through that. Go on.
Okay, so that's quarterback room controversy issues rampant. How about this? More drops at the wide receiver position than I have literally ever seen one other team do in the history of footballing. I've never personally experienced a team not be able to catch footballs at the same exact rate that Georgia has no clue how to catch footballs. It's not just Arian Smith. Again.
No. I'm who else is it, Clint?
Hey, thanks, Daniel. Again, the letter M in misery is bringing today's episode. Dylan Bell, welcome to the show of not being able to catch. And it's not just this game. It's been there consistently on throws down over in the out routes. the little quick routes, slant routes.
It wasn't just the one big drop for Dylan tonight either.
No,
it wasn't just the one. All right.
It was the 5-yard that could have set up for a better 4th down position play that he was able to drop. Almost fumbled the ball because he almost did that position and then got stripped out.
Again, we're going to talk about why we lost this game in the second segment.
But these are the things at which we suffered through that
all year.
We saw microcosms of it in this game, but this was a suffering issue all single. I needed more of the bucket. I needed less of the bottle. Okay, more of the bucket, less of the bottle all year.
And finally, this year will be the first year in the history of golf that the members of the U.S. Ryder Cup team will get paid to be a part of it. All players involved have said that the money will go straight to charity. The PGA of America voted last month to give the 12 players and Captain Keegan Bradley $300,000 to donate to charity of their choice and a $200,000 stipend. Bradley immediately said he will donate all of his to charity. So then why are they doing this exactly? If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, who will be the top seed in the NFC? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.